Hi, I'm Taylor Johnson. I am the insurance services specialist with WealthQuest Insurance Advisors. I also own a holistic health and wellness business called Haya Healing. I was born and raised in Dayton, Ohio, but I've lived all over the place. And insurance, in and of itself, has been a part of my life for a very long time. I learned the power of insurance really young. When I was 4 years old, my father was in a motorcycle accident that led to the end of his life. And so when I turned 18, I inherited some life insurance money. And I was able to use that money to start my college journey at Miami University. And then I was also able to use that money to travel to Australia, where I lived and worked for a year and a half. And I always think about that experience, which I could do a whole nother seminar on what that experience did for me, like personally and professionally, and how it changed my life. But I still to this day think about the fact that if my dad hadn't had insurance, I wouldn't have had that opportunity. And funnily enough, when I moved back to the States in 2016, I pretty much had to start all over. And I was recruited to work as a life and health benefits representative for a company that did benefits for union members. So, like police officers, teachers, and steel workers, I was doing their life and health benefits. And about a year into that job, I had been promoted to manager and was doing really well. And I found a box of my dad's old things. And inside of the box was a steelworkers union card. And I never knew that my dad was in a steelworkers union, but that was like a full circle moment for me because I was now insuring steelworkers to cover their families like my dad had been covered for me. So I think from that moment, I knew like I was on the right path as far as being in the insurance industry. And I just really understood it. And um, about a year or two after that, I ended up getting recruited to work at Issue Insurance Agency. And my eyes really opened to the insurance industry and how wide and far it goes. And my knowledge deepened. And, before I was just talking mostly life insurance and representing one company. I learned that I could be part of something where I represented more than 30 plus carriers and other types of insurance. I learned the importance of like what we're going to talk about today, long-term care and disability insurance and all the things, right? And it's really been interesting to see like how deep it really goes. And I'm so grateful to be in the position that I'm in and learn from my team at Issue, specifically the guy I'm going to introduce next, which is Mark George. I've had the pleasure of working really closely with a lot of CEOs, and I mean it wholeheartedly when I say that Mark is the best boss I've ever had. He's hilarious, first of all. And he just really has a heart of gold and it shows, but he really knows his stuff. He's so intelligent. The way that he understands insurance and just financial planning in and of itself is just really inspiring. So Mark George is the owner of Issue Insurance, and Issue Insurance is celebrating its 50th year in business. So in addition to being awesome and hilarious, he's really got he knows his stuff. He's a certified financial planner, a chartered financial consultant, and a chartered life underwriter. And Mark is also the owner of WealthQuest Insurance Advisors. So he's been a part of the WealthQuest leadership team from the beginning, a part of that journey. But when WealthQuest Corporation divested themselves of WealthQuest Insurance Advisors to become a fee-only firm, they chose Mark to continue to run that insurance business that they had started. And the WealthQuest Insurance Advisors team consists of myself, Mark, and then Dan Rigner, who is awesome to work with as well and teaches me tons of stuff every day. And he is a knowledgeable professional that's available to you for education and coaching, but we really work as a team to fill insurance needs in your financial plan. And we're also grateful to work with the WealthQuest team and have this opportunity to share with the WealthQuest clients how you can retire stronger and really live the rich life that we talk about so much. So without further ado, I'll introduce Mark George. And if there's any questions along the seminar, feel free to type in the Q&A and we will be happy to field those towards the end. Thank you.
Thanks, Taylor. Good evening. Let me start by clarifying that I wasn't a part of the WealthQuest leadership team. It's just that the WealthQuest leadership team partnered with my company for their insurance needs. And later on, they chose our company. They chose me to take over their insurance business that they were divesting themselves of. But I don't want there to be any confusion there. And then also, we're going to talk about the risk of long-term care today. But insurance isn't the only solution. It's a good solution in our opinion. We may be biased, but it's only one of the solutions. So we're not here to try and sell you anything today as much as educate you so that you can put together a plan. So with that, let me start by telling you that me and my wife, Michelle, we own long-term care insurance. And we both had caregiving responsibilities, experiences in the past. And it gives me and her peace of mind to know that we've planned for being less of a burden on each other and our children. So I'm going to assume that a lot of the participants today are baby boomers or Gen Xers. But if any of you are younger than that, fear not, as it's really never too early to start planning for the risk of long-term care. And as you'll learn, it's an important part of planning for a financially healthy retirement. So let me get our agenda today is here. Again, our goal is to educate you on the risk associated with long-term care, to educate you on options for managing these risks, and then motivate you to have a conversation with your WealthQuest relationship manager to create a plan. Now, I want to warn you, some of what we're going to talk about may trigger anxiety. And we're hopeful that any discomfort you experience will lead you to action. Planning reduces anxiety. So let's start with what is long-term care? I'm going to start with what it's not. Long-term care is not acute care or rehabilitative care. Acute care is a level of health care in which a patient is treated for a brief but severe episode of illness. Rehabilitative care is the treatment of patients with the intent of curing, improving, or preventing a worsening of their condition. Long-term care generally refers to non-medical care or custodial care for people who need help with activities of daily living or who have a cognitive impairment. Generally, it's a result of a chronic illness not expected to get better. So activities of daily living would include help with eating and transferring and continence and bathing and going to the bathroom and dressing. So what are some of the chronic conditions that could result in a need for long-term care? We've all witnessed these in people that we know: stroke, cancer, COPD, diabetes, osteoporosis, arthritis, depression, heart disease, Alzheimer's, high blood pressure, Parkinson's. There's more. According to the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, 80% of adults age 65 plus have at least one chronic condition, and 68% have two or more. These are the conditions that can lead to a need for long-term care. Recent surveys show that only 25% of people think they will ever have a need for long-term care. As we're going to learn, that is not actually reality. So we'll compare that perception of 25% of us needing it to what the stats say. So next, we're going to talk about the odds, the costs, and who pays. So the average life expectancy from birth in the United States is about 78. But if you make it to age 65, the average life expectancy for women is age 85, and for men, age 81. So if you make it to age 65, what are the chances that you'll have a need for long-term care? 69%. Only 25% of the people think they will need it, but 69% will. This denial is more pronounced in men who put out that, "Come on, you're a wimp, walk it off" facade. And you can't walk off the need for long-term care. 40% of people turning 65 will have a need for care that lasts over 2 years. And 20% of people age 65 and older will have a need for 5 years or more. And some illnesses like Parkinson's or Alzheimer's can last a decade. If you had a need for extended care lasting 3, 4, or 5 years, would it affect your financial retirement plans? Well, first, we need to know how much does it cost. So 1 year in an assisted living facility will cost around $58,000. 1 year of home health aides working 60 hours per week will cost around $78,000. And 1 year of skilled nursing facility care costs over $100,000 per year. So it's not hard to see, if you have an extended need for long-term care, that it could cost several hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, a good resource for you to look up what care costs in your specific area or in any part of the country, you can go to genworth.com. That's GENWRTH.com, and put in cost of care. And you can put in your zip code and it will tell you what the cost is in the area that you're looking up. It also gives you the ability to see what the projected cost of the care is in the future. And you have to remember that most people who are planning for long-term care risk do it in advance. And so you might not have a need for any kind of long-term care for 20 years. And what will it cost in 20 years? You can find that out at that website. So we have a rough idea of the odds of needing care and the potential costs. Now let's look at who pays. Some people think Medicare pays for long-term care. Only if it's for acute, rehabilitative, or hospice care, not for chronic illness or custodial care. Medicare helps to pay for your recovery in a skilled nursing care facility after a 3-day hospital stay. Medicare will cover the total cost of skilled nursing care for the first 20 days, after which you'll pay $185.50 co-insurance per day. After 100 days, Medicare will stop paying. So my advice is don't count on Medicare. So then we have to look, what about Medicaid? And Medicaid might pay for long-term care, but only if you are broke. Loosely defined, broke for a single individual is no more than $2,000 in assets and no more than $2,523 of monthly income. If you have a house, they probably won't count that or kick you out. But after you die, via the Medicaid estate recovery program, they will take reimbursement for Medicaid expenses from the equity in your home. Some people will try to get broke to qualify by moving assets. But any assets transferred within 5 years of your application for Medicaid will be clawed back for the qualification calculation. Medicaid eligibility and estate recovery are complicated subjects and too much to cover in depth here. So set up an appointment with your relationship manager if you want a deeper dive on that. The moral, unless you are on WealthQuest's busted platform, which doesn't exist, don't count on Medicaid to pay for your LTC, your long-term care. So then who pays? If Medicare doesn't pay and Medicaid doesn't pay, that leaves you. Ask yourself, if you had to pay for long-term care, which assets would you use? Consider funding LTC out of pocket may mean using money or income from current investments, which could trigger additional taxes. Selling things like stocks due to the need for cash flow at the wrong time may result in a loss greater than expected. Selling property like real estate at the wrong time can result in material losses. If you use income-producing assets, you could lose future income. Paying for care out of pocket may be a viable option for those who are wealthy enough to afford it. However, the impact of generating an additional $80,000 to $150,000 a year, thank you, Dan, can have the potential of causing long-term consequences on your wealth and your prior financial commitments. Plus, these decisions might not be made by you. If you need long-term care, it might be another family member or friend making the decisions for you. And are they qualified to decide what assets to use to pay for your long-term care? There are undeniable demographic shifts that will impact your retirement plans. And so how will demographics and current trends impact things? Consider that in 1900, the average life expectancy was only 47.6 years. And in 1940, it was only 63.6 years. In the past, many people just died before needing long-term care. But with better hygiene, healthier lifestyles, sufficient food, improved medical care, and reduced child mortality, we can now expect to live much longer than our ancestors of just a few generations ago. Let's look at the effect of the baby boom on demographics. When the boys came back from World War II, 92% of women capable of having kids did. Those families had an average of just under 4 kids. You can see the effect of the baby boom on the chart where the fastest growing segment of the US population from 1950 to 1960 was the under 15 years of age profile. Well, as time marched on, the baby boom became an age wave. And now, for the first time, age 65 plus is the fastest growing demographic. We are living way beyond the age of our parents and grandparents. This massive growth in the number of older people will move markets and reshape society and affect your retirement plans. Here's an interesting statistic. Going back to the beginning of recorded time, all of the people who lived to be 65 or older, what percentage of them are alive today? A whopping 67% of all of the 65-year-olds in recorded time are alive today. So we are adding more years to our life, but are we adding more life to our years? Consider that 33 countries have a greater life expectancy than the United States. There's a new term being used by gerontologists, though. It's not life expectancy, it's health expectancy. That is, how long can we expect to live in good health? We lag much of the world even more here. And you can see the center bar in the chart where it shows an average age of 78, but you only have in the United States, but you only have an average health expectancy of 66.1 years. So that's 12.4 years of potentially bad health. How are we doing on time? We good? Okay, good. So let me see. That is how we can expect, okay, we lag much of the world even here. The goal should be to match your life expectancy with your health expectancy, right? How will society change in reaction to these seismic demographic shifts? Will the government be there to help? Well, let's consider the government's other retirement obligation, Social Security. So coming out of the Depression, FDR and the government passed the New Deal, and the first Social Security check was issued on January 31st, 1940. Social Security as a percent of the federal budget in 1940 was 0.03%. Today, it's over 75 times that amount, and 23% of our federal budget is Social Security. In 1940, for every one person receiving benefits, there were 159 people paying in. Today, there are 2.8 people paying in for every one person receiving. It's more pressure on the system. The moral, don't count on the government. I don't think they're going to be in a position to pay for your long-term care. So let's look at some other trends that could be influential. According to a 2017 survey, an overwhelming majority of people would rather receive care in their home. While 1% of the US population resides in assisted living and skilled nursing homes, 43% of COVID deaths occurred there. This COVID crisis has increased the demand for home care. But there's an elder care shortage. 58% of nursing homes are limiting new admissions because of the current workforce crisis. Think supply and demand. There are 48 million informal caregivers to adults. These are people who give care to family or friends, usually without payment. Roughly 24 million become informal caregivers every year, and 61% of them are women. By the way, 92% of informal caregivers are also financial caregivers. There's a few other trends that are noteworthy. We talked about our health spans not matching our lifespans, but how about that women often outlive their partners? Women have a 5-year higher life expectancy than men. And those women that are partnered with a man, the average age differential is 2.5 years. It's not uncommon that as men grow older, often the wife becomes the caregiver for the last year or more until the husband passes away. The wife may live another 7 or 10 years. Who will take care of her? And have the resources been depleted? Has this issue been discussed? Fewer children. When the baby boomer parents were having us, they had an average of 4 kids each. The baby boomers only had an average of 2 kids each. 20% of baby boomers had no kids. Female income growth. Women are increasingly becoming more educated than men. For every 100 men that graduated from college, there are 132 women. More and more women are working and becoming the main breadwinners. And finally, dislocation. Having local children is a blessing, but more so than in the past, kids are relocating to out of state or across the country. So all this tells us that caregivers may be less available. Now I want to hand this over to Taylor to walk you through some of the emotional and psychological aspects of long-term care.
Mark. So I don't know if y'all are able to type in the chat or not, but let's just take a moment to bring this back down to the ground. So how many of us have had personal experiences with a situation like this? Maybe mom had Alzheimer's, or maybe you had to be the caregiver yourself or something like that. Does anyone here have a story they want to share about sometime this has come up? Yeah. Perfect. So Dan, if you would.
Get him a microphone.
Perfect.
My name is Dan Rigner, and I work with the WealthQuest team as far as all the insurance aspects go. I'm 52 years old. About 18 years ago, my grandmother, my dearest grandmother, was put in a long-term care and assisted living facility in Pittsburgh. Her husband had predeceased maybe in the late 80s. They had commercial property, a large family farm just outside of Pittsburgh. I mean, they had a lot of assets, but they had no long-term care. They never planned. And it was a disaster. I mean, at around 85 years of age, she was placed in a home, a wonderful facility in Pittsburgh. And we thought, okay, with Alzheimer's, the projection was she wasn't going to live maybe 3, 4, 5 years. Unbelievably, a decade later, she is still there. Sadly, she had no idea who anybody was. She had no broken bones. She had nothing wrong with her physically, but just continued to live. And at about 95 years of age, she passed away very peacefully one day when my mother was visiting her, just was gone. But, when she died maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and sadly, I mean, it was about an $850,000, $860,000 tab for her care during that time. And my mother during that time had to sell off commercial property, part of the farm. We had part of the farm logged, all of that just to continue to pay for care. And there was no planning. More recently, I have an 85-year-old father who, just has had some health issues. He never did get long-term care, even though it was recommended. And last year in Pittsburgh, he had to go in. He spent his time using the Medicare portion that covered him for the day that he was treated. But then he had to move in with my sister, who's just a little younger than I am, and her husband. And, he's an 85-year-old man, and they didn't have the ability to have somebody come in. The money wasn't there to pay for that. And just experiences. My brother-in-law, there were times when my father would have, regrettably, an accident. And I'm thinking, here, my sister married a man many, many years ago, and this guy probably never thought that he'd be bathing his father-in-law in a shower because something had happened and having to clean him up. And it's just, that's their reality now. And, you can't plan for something once it happened, but to me, it's just a shame that it has happened, but that's what we're dealing with because they never took the time to plan for it. So it's just one reason why I think this is a very prudent conversation to have.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Double. So let's just for a moment imagine, take a moment wherever you're at, to kind of walk through and envision what something like this would look like. So outside of Mark went over all of the costs, let's pretend you are yourself, you're in a family, you have 3 siblings, you've got a brother and 2 sisters, and your mom is diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And younger sister is designated as the caregiver for mom, right? And so let's say your younger sister has like a long day taking care of mom. She's living with her in the house, and she's had a tiring day, stressful day. She lays down, and as soon as she lays down, she hears a boom downstairs. She runs downstairs. She checks on mom, makes sure she's okay. There's no injuries. She gets her back in bed. And then she needs a few minutes to, let the adrenaline wear off. And so she starts scrolling on Facebook. When she gets on Facebook, she sees you posting your family vacation and your other sister posting out having, doing the paint and wine, events and all the other things, like living their lives, right? And then the next morning, your sister goes to the doctor, and the doctor tells her labs are all out of whack. She's gained a bunch of weight, and he's lecturing her, she needs to take better care of herself. And let's say that your younger sister, prior to mom getting diagnosed with Alzheimer's, was a 6-figure executive, really respected in her industry, and was only expecting to be in a caregiving situation for a few months. But 2 years later, she tries to go back to work, and she's not seen on the same level. The industry has changed a lot. And as Mark would say, the bloom is off the rose, right? So she's not shining as bright as she once was, and she doesn't definitely feel as good as she once did. And then after 5 years of caregiving, mom dies. And obviously younger sisters now having money issues, health issues, psychological issues, all the things. And this happens a lot. The estate is divided equally between you and your 3 siblings. Even though younger sister was the one that did all the work, that's the way that it was set up. So after that, your younger sister finds out that her 19-year-old son is now going to be going to rehab. And you can imagine the guilt that she feels because of those years that she wasn't there for them, because she was taking care of mom and going through all her own stuff, right? So just envisioning that, just maybe take a moment to kind of really picture if that were to happen, right? And so this is the kind of thing that happens all too often, but it's not talked about often enough. And we just can't underestimate the emotional and psychological aspects of long-term care. It's not just about money, and it's not just for you, it's for your caregiver, or it's for the caregiver's family, right? It's so much deeper than just a money thing. And the risk is very real. It's an expensive risk. It's a risk that affects your family, that affects your happiness, and that affects your ability to live the rich life that we talk about living. So I'm going to hand it back to Mark, and he's going to talk about what are your options for managing the risk and how can we kind of start planning for that.
Thanks, Taylor. So it kind of reminded me when Taylor was having us imagine, I thought about some of the people that I've talked to about long-term care and how the males, and I'm a male, so I can be critical of myself, are always like, I won't need that. I'm good. And what they don't realize is we ain't buying it for you. We're buying it for your family. So that they don't have to take care of you, that they can love you and be with you, but not have to be your caregiver. So it is funny. I'm tough. I can handle it. No, we're not getting it so that you can get into a nice facility. We're getting it so that it's a less of an emergency on the family. So when retirees and pre-retirees were surveyed about their greatest financial worries regarding retirement, the results showed their biggest concerns were about healthcare costs, including long-term care. When asked what would be your biggest worry if you had an extended long-term care need? Most were concerned about being a burden on their family, even more than dying or using up their savings. Taylor, I think I handed it off to you at the wrong slide. So good job. So don't underestimate, as Taylor said, the emotional and psychological aspects of long-term care. It's not just a money thing. So now let's talk about what are your options for managing this risk. So I don't think there's a silver bullet. I think that you need to contemplate a multi-pronged approach, save some money, maybe buy some insurance, take care of yourself. But let's look at what your options are for dealing with this risk. You could be in denial, say that you're going to be one of the 25% of people, or believe that there's only 25% of people are going to need long-term care and it's not going to be you, even though 69% will need long-term care. You can minimize the risk by taking care of yourself, diet, exercise. There's no guarantee, but studies will say that if you did take care of yourself, that your health expectancy would increase, and so your risk would decrease. You could let the government pay, but for that to happen, you have to be broke. You could pay for the cost with your own income and assets, but who knows if the timing is going to be optimal at the time of your liquidation of an asset to pay for long-term care. Or you could transfer some or all of the risk. And one way to transfer the risk is through the purchase of insurance. So we're going to give you a high-level view of 3 types of insurance policies available for you to transfer the risk. And if you want to drill down, again, you'll have to contact your WealthQuest relationship manager. So the very first long-term care insurance we refer to as traditional long-term care insurance. And it's a little like health insurance. Expenses are reimbursed up to policy limits. Benefit eligibility is triggered from a doctor's certification that you're unable to perform 2 of 6 activities of daily living, or that you have a cognitive impairment requiring substantial supervision. And assuming that you qualify, then you can collect benefits. And the benefits can be designed with a lot of flexibility in terms of how much and for how long. And also, there are potential tax deductions. If you're a business owner, you have some significant tax advantages in the purchase of long-term care insurance, and you should talk to your relationship manager. You can configure it with inflation protection so that your benefit grows over time, so that if you don't use it for 20 years, it pays a higher percentage of your bills. Premiums on traditional long-term care are generally paid over your lifetime, forever. So that's a little bit of a disadvantage. And the other thing is that the premiums paid over your lifetime, they're not guaranteed. The insurance company has the ability to raise the rates if they can develop or show the National Insurance Department that their costs are higher than the actual revenue being taken in. So one other thing that some people don't like about traditional long-term care insurance, and by the way, long-term care insurance is probably the cheapest option. Traditional long-term care insurance of all of the insurances are the cheapest option. But again, they can raise rates. But if you're in the 31% who will not need care, then some people get indigestion over paying expensive premiums over a long period of time. And then God bless you if you die in your sleep, but it gives them indigestion to know they paid premiums and they're not going to receive anything. So that is one of the criticisms of traditional long-term care. And then also, traditional long-term care is a reimbursement contract. So they can determine what they will reimburse you for. And no traditional long-term care reimburses you for your kids or your relatives taking care of you. You have to have certified caregivers. So that sometimes is an issue. You know, in my house, my parents had long-term care insurance, but my mother would not let a stranger in the house to take care of my dad. So it was like, really? A couple of other things. just in general about insurance for long-term care, and it applies to traditional long-term care, it does get more expensive the longer you wait. So if you wait and you don't plan until you're 65, it's a lot more expensive than if you plan at age 50. So keep that in mind. And along that, usually, I would say on average that most of the advisors that use my company to help their clients get long-term care, they purchase it in their 50s and early 60s. I would say early to mid 60s. And you have to be healthy to qualify for long-term care. We get a lot of phone calls from advisors that say, hey, one of my clients, they went to the doctor because he's forgetful, and now they're concerned he might have an issue. We want to talk to you about long-term care. It's too late. You have to contemplate insurance as a solution to your long-term care risk before you feel sick. So that's one kind of insurance, traditional long-term care. Then we also have a hybrid, and hybrids are very popular today. And the first one we're going to talk about, or we'll call it a linked benefit product. And it really is two policies combined together in one. So it's a life insurance policy and it's a long-term care policy. There's actually two policies combined in one. And same eligibility triggers for benefits that you have with traditional long-term care, the activities of daily living and the cognitive. It's usually configured with a 6-year benefit, not all the time, but usually. And so if you qualify for benefits, the way that this works, because if you remember, we talked about there's two separate policies, you would start to receive benefits first from the life insurance policy. And they would consider it an early payment of the death benefit. We call that an acceleration of benefits. So your first couple years of long-term care benefits on a linked benefit product would come from an acceleration of the death benefit. And so let's say you had 2 years of benefits available for you to from the death benefit. If you only collected for 1 year, then your death benefit would be cut roughly in half. And so if you use half the death benefit because you needed it for long-term care and then you die, your beneficiaries' heirs would receive half the death benefit. If you require all of the death benefit for care over a full 2-year period, then your beneficiaries are going to get no death benefit. But if you require 4 years of benefits after the life insurance policy has been fully paid out early or accelerated, that's when the second policy in this linked benefit policy comes in and kicks in, and it will pay you benefits for 4 more years. So a lot of people like that, people that have indigestion about, God, all that money, and if I don't use it, I lose it. But it is more expensive because generally these linked benefit policies are paid as a single premium or over a shorter period of time, like 10 or 15 years. So you would expect that the cost would be higher than traditional long-term care, which you pay for the rest of your life, and the rates can go up. But on the linked benefit products, the rates are guaranteed, and so they will not change. And the other thing that's nice about linked benefit products is you can configure them with something we call an indemnity benefit instead of a reimbursement benefit. And on an indemnity benefit, all you have to do is qualify. Can't do 2 of 6 ADLs, or I have a cognitive impairment, and you can collect the full benefit. So if it's $6,000 a month on a traditional long-term care contract, if you only had expenses of $3,000, that's how much you would collect. But on an indemnity contract, they don't care what your expenses are. They only care if you qualify, and then they give you that in cash. And yeah, you can go to Vegas. I hear people tease about that. Well, that's probably not what you're going to do. You could pay a landscaper. Maybe that's what you'll do. But probably where I see it being used the most is if your children help out. Like in Taylor's example, when that executive took a hit in income because they took time off to take care of their parents, probably would have been nice if mom and dad could have taken their and helped that kid because of the impact on that kid's income. And with an indemnity benefit paying cash, you can do whatever you want with it. So again, giving you a high level, but that's a linked benefit product. And then a third flavor is just plain old life insurance. Plain old life insurance, not 2 policies like the linked benefit, just 1 policy, plain old life insurance. But they add a rider that lets you access the death benefit early if you can't perform the activities of daily living or you have a cognitive impairment. So the benefits on a life insurance policy with a chronic illness rider would be more robust as far as the life insurance part, and long-term care would be a secondary priority. If you wanted a hybrid product and your primary objective was as much long-term care protection as you can get, you probably would favor a linked benefit policy. But the experts at WealthQuest and WealthQuest Insurance Advisors, they can help you out to walk through all of these details if insurance is a good tool to help you manage your risk of long-term care. So let's just recap. What's the value of a long-term care solution? It allows you to maintain independence and avoid burdening your family. Protects retirement assets while optimizing your money and your life. Protects the ability for loved ones to live a rich life while you're alive and afterwards. Protects your legacy, your inheritance for children and grandchildren while averting family disruptions. It assures your ability to get quality care in the setting that you choose. It provides for peace of mind and a life well done. So our advice today is be proactive. The 4 questions you should be asking yourself are what long-term care options would you most prefer if it were needed? What roles and responsibilities would you like different family members to play in terms of providing you care? Would you prefer that your family members be care providers or care coordinators? How will your long-term care needs be paid for? So you need to formulate your long-term care plan now and not when you're in a hospital bed, as Dan Rigner always reminds me. If you decide to transfer the risk utilizing insurance, you don't have to insure the entire potential risk. Diversification of techniques used to manage the risk is often a smart approach. I'm going to encourage you to read the NAIC Long-Term Care Insurance Guide. There are a ton of excellent resources. If you want to spend a couple hours, and I know it's not exciting to get educated on what the likelihood of your needing it is and what resources are available, I would encourage you to read that. And I think Taylor will be sending anybody who was on today's call a copy of that guide so that you can look at it. And then finally, and I hate to be repetitive, but set up a meeting with your WealthQuest relationship manager to estimate what these expenses could be and how that would affect your plans. So with that, hope we didn't go too far over on time. We'd like to open it up for any questions, and I'm going to ask Dan Rigner, because he's an expert, to come up here, and Taylor and our group. And if we can't answer the questions, we will get the answers. Oh, it looks like there's no question. No, I'm just kidding. Well, I think we can end it. I'm going to hand it back to Joy. Joy, thanks for inviting us in today. We really appreciate it. The opportunity to talk to your customers.
Thank you so much, Mark and Taylor. That was wonderful. My own family has known the benefits of thinking and being blessed with long-term care. I mean, ideally, I think we all hope we live to a ripe old age. And I really appreciate what you said in the beginning about these topics may cause some feelings of anxiety, but that's okay because we can make a plan. And that's what WealthQuest is all about. So as has been said, if you would like to make a plan and think about these things, please contact your advisor. Hope you all have a great night and stay warm and dry. Thank you.